Where's head talk?
We're back at it again with another vlog.
Sister Squad.
But it's just the audio.
It's
The audio. I lost the footage.
If you want to see today.
Wow,
would you look at that?
It's snowing.
All right, so our two topics for today are skin cancer and burns.
Someone say Conjay.
All right, so we're going to talk about 4 different types of skin cancer. We'll start with basal cell carcinoma. So this affects the base layer, that's stratum basale. It is the most common form of skin cancer. And it's also the least likely to spread to other areas of the body. It usually occurs on the face. Especially on the nose. Did you like that question?
It was like, what does he have to be concerned with besides the fact that his friends are shallow? That's because our poor beach boy has cancer. What?
In 99% of cases, removal of the basal cell carcinoma is enough to cure it. But it does usually come back again. And so this is most common in people over 40.
Could things develop at like a younger age and then like turn into skin cancer?
Well, this is a form of skin cancer.
Yeah, but like if you had like, for example, like a mole, could it turn into?
Not in, what do you mean?
Okay, because like, I don't know, in 5th grade I had like a mole under my chin, and they said they had to get it removed because it might turn into skin cancer.
Right, right.
So is that like?
Is that like a thing? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, yes it does. Yes it does.
Okay, well,
Just fact check.
I love it. She trusts me more than she trusts her doctor. Yay, thank you, Ella.
He's trying to get extra money. She's suing my doctor.
All right, squamous cell carcinoma.
Once again, being recorded.
And so once again, this is a cancer of the epidermis. And they usually form a shallow ulcer with a raised border.
are we gonna see pictures of this stuff?
We're going to watch a little video that goes
No.
through. Not like yesterday. It's a little different. This appears most often on the scalp, the ears, the back of the hands, and the lower lip. It appears to be sun-induced. So those are places that are kind of exposed to the sun, the tops of your ears, your lower lip if it sticks out some, your scalp. Elizabeth,
So wait, scalp, ears, lower lip.
back of the hands.
Are those like
age spots?
No, they are not. Age spots are different.
Is that melanoma or melanin? Is that melanin?
It is, and sometimes it's also has to do with. They sometimes refer to them as liver spots because there's also some bile pigment in there as well, which makes them kind of that lighter color. So this type of skin cancer grows more rapidly. And so it may get into the lymph nodes. That's not good. We can remove those though. So usually this is treated with surgery first to remove as much of it as possible. And then sometimes with radiation therapy as well. Which, you know, it kind of seems a little ironic that it's sun-induced, so that's radiation causes it, and then you're going to get rid of it with radiation.
Radiation cancels.
You can swap out radiation. So if you get, like, if you spend too much time in the sun and get this skin cancer, would spending more time in the sun cancel out?
No, it would not, because the time
Two negatives equals positive.
radiation therapy that they use for cancers is a little bit stronger than sunlight.
So if you got really close to the sun, you go into space.
Just don't make your wings out of wax, okay?
So like if you got on a mountain, that's close to the sun.
Oh my god. If you could.
Just
Scientific breakthrough.
I'm actually going to stick this back on here. Malignant melanoma. Going back to squamous cell carcinoma for just a second. Squamous cell carcinoma usually appears during middle age. That's usually when that occurs. Going on to then malignant melanoma. Malignant melanoma is cancer of the melanocytes. So Ella, this is where your mole comes in.
Oh wait, it
Melanocytes.
I know.
It's more common in people who have light skin, light hair, or light eyes. Ella's like, poster child here. The median age of diagnosis, the median age is 53.
you got 10 years.
Okay. But there can be a lot of variation. For instance, I know of students we have here who had it as a child. I'm not yet 53, so obviously I was diagnosed before I was 53, so I still have a ways to go to get there. Okay, so some of the things that we look for. The ABCDE rule for diagnosis. It used to be ABCD, and then they've added on the E. So things we're looking for. So we're looking at moles, and these are the kind of things we're looking for. We're looking for changes, basically, is what it all comes down to. So A stands for asymmetry. So the two sides of the pigmented patch do not match. My dermatologist told me this morning she was looking at some moles on my leg, and she's like, yeah, some of these aren't normal, but who's normal?
It'll probably be fine. I'd love to do
My
that
mom
for my
has
doctor.
all the time. My mom's like covered in freckles, like her whole body is full of freckles. So she has to go to the doctor all the time and get stuff removed. And yeah. I asked my brother how he thought he was gonna die, and he said this mole right here.
This mole right. What an interesting conversation.
All right, the B stands for border irregularity. So if the borders are not smooth but have indentations.
No, it's called a regulatory.
I'm just gonna diagnose myself with skin cancer after this.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. Okay, C stands for color. So if the spot contains different colors, but like I said, a lot of this is about change. If you notice a change, that's why I have to go to my dermatologist every 6 months, is to see if anything has changed.
Do we take pictures then and
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, so like I've got one on my nose, and she's been watching this one on my nose. It's a little one. Doesn't bother me any, but it's really dark, and so she thinks that there might be something with it. So she asked me today. She's like, I told her, I said, I think it's actually getting lighter, and but it looks like it's fading. It's not like it's getting a lighter color of brown. It's like it's fading. It's really weird. And so I told her that, and she's like, is it turning blue? I'm like, no. She's like, well, sometimes when they're really dark, they look blue. Okay. That kind of alarmed me. Is it turning blue? Turning into a Smurf.
Shows papers. It is actually turning blue. That's a breeze.
All right. D is for diameter. If the diameter is larger than 6 millimeters, so that's about the size of diameter of a pencil eraser. About that. So once again, we're looking for changes too. Is the mole growing? That's not a good sign, because that means that the melanocytes are growing. And E is elevation. Is it sticking out above the skin surface? Now, my mother had melanoma 3 times. And when I was a kid, I was 1 year old the first time she was diagnosed with it. And but when I was growing up, and she didn't have it again for another 20 years, and then another 20 years after that. And but when I was growing up, she had this mole on the back of her neck that stood out like that far. And so that always worried me. And so I was like, so when she got diagnosed the second time, it wasn't that mole. One time the first time it was on her leg, the second time it was on her arm. And so I told her, the second time she got diagnosed, I'm like, how can I remove that mole? And her doctor's like, oh, it's no big deal, it's fine. I'm like, it looks like she had like an extra nipple on the back of her neck. It was awful. So they did eventually take it off, but
Stick out. They're on my armpits.
skin tags?
Yeah.
I was just reading about those the other day.
Whenever I sense something's painful, I'm just gonna
What's that? What's that? How do you define what is success?
You just did.
I was just
It's
like,
like,
well,
okay,
I think
Okay.
That's where you usually get them.
Talking about cancer, this isn't funny. Oh my gosh, we're watching the last song, and I don't know.
I was just reading about them the other day, and I don't remember now.
Cheesy romantic comedy that
Because I have one next to my eye. And so I was looking for ways to get rid of it without having it removed, but because it's next to my eye, I have to get it removed if I want it removed. All right, so once we've established that, yes, you do have melanoma, so of course we would take some cells and
Oh boy.
take some cells and do a biopsy. So there is this TNM guide for staging. So to determine what stage of cancer it is. Now this TNM guide works for all forms of cancer. The one I'm showing you, I'm going to show you what the guide is specifically geared towards melanoma, but you can adapt it to work for any different kinds of cancer. So I don't expect you to copy this chart down, and I'll actually put these notes up on dashboard so you have access to this chart, but I just want you to see what this chart looks like. Okay. So the T stands for tumor. Okay, so the T is for tumor. The T classification is how thick is the tumor. Okay. So don't pay attention, this stuff on the far right-hand side, ignore that, but the second column, how thick is the tumor? So the thicker it is, the higher you go up the T scale.
Thick as in deeper.
Yes, deep, how deep. So and a lot of that has to do with if it's invading other tissues, because the tumor is going to grow downward. Most tumors grow downward. Okay, they'll grow upward too, but they grow down at the same rate. Okay, so they're getting into, so if they're invading other tissues, so T1 is less than 1 millimeter. T2 you can see 1 to 2 millimeters, etc. Okay, so that's the tumor. N is for node. And that's about the lymph nodes. Have the tumor cells gone to the lymph nodes in the region? So for instance, since mine was on my arm, they checked the lymph nodes in this armpit to see if it had spread there. So if it hasn't spread, yay, that's a good thing. Okay, that's N0. And then if it's only spread to one node, or if it's spread to more nodes, and when you get down to N3, 4 or more nodes have the cancer cells in them, which means that they're more likely to be traveling around your body and going other places. Okay. And so then the M classification is the metastasis, and metastasis is when it moves to other locations and causes cancer in other locations in the body. So M0, and if it's not in the lymph nodes, it's not likely to have metastasized, usually. Okay. So then you can see that so if it goes into, like I said, this is just for melanoma. So if I have melanoma in other parts of my skin, if it's gone to other parts of my skin, if it's gone to my lungs, and then other visceral metastases. And so based on the ratings for each one of these, that's when you hear that it's stage 1 to stage 4 cancers. So mine, luckily, was stage 1. It's skin cancer. This is number 4. Number 3 was malignant melanoma.
Don't have enough, apparently.
Yeah, we should not do that.
Way too much.
It's
Just
just
not
not
Cancer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously
wait,
that's
if we don't have skin, we can't get skin cancer.
Well, you can get other cancers.
Ah, darn it.
Yeah,
good
full
luck.
again.
If you didn't have a heart, you couldn't have a heart attack. There you go.
Oh, okay.
The only logical explanation.
All right. Kaposi's sarcoma. I mentioned this one because we'll see this one again later on in the year. Kaposi's sarcoma is an opportunistic infection.
Oh.
Opportunistic infection caused by a virus. What an opportunistic infection is it's an infection that doesn't usually affect people with normal immune systems. But when your immune system is compromised, it will affect you. So where we will see this again is when we talk about the immune system and we talk about AIDS. Because this is a very common cancer in AIDS patients. And it metastasizes or spreads very quickly. And our last skin disorder, and obviously based on the video we watched yesterday, this list could go on and on.
Yeah, what was the thing with the foot? In the bone?
Flesh-eating bacteria.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. You could cut off his foot then. Like, how do you fix that?
Get rid of
Basically, yeah, that's what you'd have to do.
Because,
Well, and to that degree of that picture that we saw. That was- Yes. All right. So with burns. So burns can be caused by UV light. We know that, sunburns. They could be chemical burns.
I have a bunch of scars from burns. And they're all from making muffins. No joke, whenever I make muffins, I'll be getting the pan out and then like the wrapping burns.
Muffin
Just like
burns.
holding it
Muffin
up
burns.
without oven mitts. It's worth it.
So that would be a thermal burn. Okay.
Yes, I have plenty of thermal burn scars.
All right. So we classify burns based on degrees, and these do the opposite of murder.
They actually bring you back to life.
No, where first degree murder is the worst.
Oh.
First degree burns are the least bad of the burns.
Yeah, that actually like helped me remember it because like Olivia Benson's
There you go. There you go. I can appreciate that. So a first degree burn only damages the epidermis. It causes redness and slight discomfort. Most sunburns fall into this category. These might peel, they might not too. No.
No. Well,
I said most. I didn't say the worst. I said most.
I haven't had like blisters, like full bruise.
That's why you put sunscreen on, kids.
I did.
Put more on.
I forgot.
I would like to.
Reapplying is so hard to remember though.
No, it's not.
Second degree burns. Second degree burns damage the epidermis and the upper part of the dermis. What is the upper part of the dermis? What's that layer called? No. It's not reticular. Reticular is the deep one.
Swamp.
Look back at your notes. Nope, that's part of the.
Can you raise both your arms?
Hang on. Wow, this is a lot of notes. Surus? No.
Okay, you're back. You went back too far.
Papillary.
Papillary. Thank you. Papillary layer of the dermis. Okay. This might do some damage to the glands as well.
Wait, sorry. Okay, so the papillary and the what?
Epidermis.
Yeah, I was like.
So this is characterized by blistering. So when I was a senior in high school, it was the weekend before I was getting my senior pictures taken.
Oh no.
Oh,
This is already about
Yeah, and you know I grew up in Denver, and so we were going to Water World for the day,
No.
and I wore a bikini all day long, and I was beyond lobster. I could not move. All I could do, I was physically ill. Like all I could do was drink ginger ale and sit in a velvet chair. Like this.
I'm so sorry.
Imagine if he like came to your house to take this.
It was and my parents were out of town, so they didn't know I did it. They didn't know about it, and they get back into town, and I'm like wearing like high neck stuff, and so they can't see what I.
You're just like
wear makeup
sweating.
It was awful.
Did you still take your picture?
I did, and they must have airbrushed them because you cannot tell that I was a lobster in it. But the worst of it was that in some of the pictures I was wearing jeans, and they wanted me to like lay like this, and I was like in so much pain. It was awful.
Can we do soft smiles?
Softer smile.
They're like, can you act happy? Oh my God.
It's no wonder when I look at my senior pictures, I think that doesn't even look like me. But,
I'm so happy. Senior year.
so that's my stupidity story of the day. No wonder I got skin cancer later.
You hear that? Sounds like it's time to change the subject. Third-degree burns.
Third-degree burns.
Did you hear that? Mom?
Yeah, hi. Talking about burns. Can you please pick me up?
Third-degree burns damage the epidermis and the dermis, the whole layers, both layers of the dermis. Now, the kind of, I guess if you can put a good spin on it, the kind of good news about the third-degree burns is that you destroy the nerve endings so they don't hurt.
You don't feel it.
Yeah, you don't feel it.
You can see my senior pictures.
That's what you
want.
Exactly. Exactly.
I can't feel anything.
Now, sometimes with these, they turn kind of a grayish white or blackened color, a dark color.
Maybe don't take your in the picture.
As much as I shouldn't admit it, I've had one of these as well, but it was a very small piece of my body, and it was from the sun.
Oh my
And
God.
I was wearing shorts, and I had sunscreen on, but I missed right above my socks.
Oh, ow.
And so I had a line right above my socks, and the line was there for like 2 years.
When did I get this?
Actually,
not trendy.
yeah, actually not out.
Why is my ankle?
I have a funny story after class. Oh no,
It's worse. I
know that?
Third-degree burn images. That's not pretty.
I
Why?
There's four of them?
That's what
Yeah.
I was curious.
What is it? What is the tree?
Fourth-degree burn not only damages the skin, it damages the underlying tissue.
Put some sunscreen.
Just wear sun.
I don't think it's possible to get a fourth-degree burn from the sun.
I mean, if you were hypothetically, if your body
Your
found,
cancer by going to the
So
what if you went on the sun?
we're not going down that road.
You
would be dead.
So
wouldn't
many
you?
others.
You would be vaporized.
So many other people.
How do you imagine?
How do you think you'll die?
Gas.
Go
So
up to the
fourth-degree burns definitely require skin grafting.
Nine out of here. A rule of nine.
Yeah, rule of nines.
Yeah. I agree with what Maggie says.
What did Maggie says?
I cannot imagine how hard it's going to be to follow along with the recording.
Indeed. I was thinking the same thing, Maggie.
Sorry, guys.
They're gonna
Just
love
good
it.
luck, Charlie.
They're gonna be so
jealous that they didn't have this good time.
Yeah.
They're gonna wish they were. Yeah, that's what you get for being
Yeah.
cussing the 10 people.
Eating beignets.
Doing service.
Jeez. Jesus. Why do that when you could be learning?
All right, so we break the body, for the rule of nines, we break the body into regions that represent 9% of the surface area of the body. So there are 11 regions that represent 9% of the surface of the body. And then that remaining 1% is the genital region.
Wait, that's 10. It's 9% and then 1%?
What's 900?
11 regions that are 9%, so that's 99%. And then the remaining 1% is the genitals. So for instance, like the front of your torso is 9%. The back of your torso is 9%. Yeah, a leg is 9%, back and front, things like that. And so we use this to estimate the severity of the burn. When they throw out those numbers and say, like, you know, that 30% of the body was burned, this is where they're getting those numbers from. So a critical burn is if over 25% of the body,
25 or
25,
What kind of burn did you say?
critical. If over 25% of the body has second-degree burns, or if over 10% of the body has third-degree burns, or if there are third-degree burns of the face, hands, or feet, hands, face, feet.
Is it hands, face, and feet?
Yes,
Like
Or
all at the
feet.
same time, or just any of them?
either one, any of them. The burns to the face, any kind of burn to the face is particularly, in the first degree not so much, but with second and third and fourth degree burns, the fourth degree burns are just a disaster in and of themselves. But burns to the face, because if your face is getting burned, it's likely that your respiratory passageways are getting burned as well. So that's the danger with that, yeah. The biggest danger when you have these severe burns is losing body fluid. And if you lose too much body fluid, your blood volume goes down.
What did you say?
And blood volume goes down.
Blood volume goes down. And if your blood volume goes down too far, you can't move around your body and deliver oxygen. Okay, now's your time to say.
Hi, bye.
Oh, good
Hi.
luck. Good luck, Charlie.